feeling of getting two aces doesn't change no matter how long you've been playing the game of poker. When you look down at one ace, you want another. And when you see the second, it's an exciting rush.
I get those sweaty palms, like I'm sitting there and, you know, zip up my jacket so people can't read my heartbeat on my neck and stuff like that.
A true great poker player can just let everything slide off of them.
I mean, you have to be okay with losing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time.
You should adjust based on what you've seen, but you shouldn't let it affect how you're playing.
When somebody does think better than you, it's something to reflect on, you know, and it's exciting to try to improve that so that next time you can come back better than them.
And welcome everyone to Crown Melbourne. Now we have a beautiful afternoon down here at South Bank and we're down to the final table of the main event. So pretty exciting stuff with only 7 players left. And we're looking at some pretty serious talent too. Can't wait to get in there and see how they're going. We're here to launch the main event of Crown's Aussie Millions Poker Championships. Now, the winner of the first prize pool will take out an estimated $1.6 million. Let's head to Luke Hodge, Hawthorn Premiership Club Captain, to do the official shuffle up and deal.
Good luck for everyone who's playing, so dealers, shuffle up and deal.
Last year, there were 629 entrants into the main event, and it certainly seems like the poker room is full yet again. Now, the excitement is certainly building here, and we cannot wait to see who takes out the Aussie Millions bracelet.
Thank you, Sherry. In 2014, there are 668 players that entered into this event, and there are your final 7, with a prize pool of nearly $7 million and a first prize, a whopping $1.6 million. I sit aside the 2007 winner of the Grand Final APPT, Grant Levy. There is the LK Boutique Championship bracelet. Grant, what are they thinking?
Well, it's a mixture of youth and experience, actually, Paul. There's some guys here that have got some good results, and some young guys here that haven't played too many tournaments, wouldn't have a lot of experience on big final tables like this one.
Well, that is Jake Bolsiger, who ran 3rd at the World Series not so long ago. He has plenty of experience. He opened the action with pocket 10s, around to Darren Rabinowitz. And he's had a look, and he looks like he wants to get involved.
We raised to 215,000.
He 3-bets to 215,000. Around to Vincent Rubianes.
Fold.
He gets out of the way.
That's a pretty strong move from Darren there. Jake has opened under the gun with pocket 10s, and Darren under the gun +1. The next seat over is 3-bet. It's usually a sign of strength, raising an under the gun open. Jake's got a very legitimate hand here. Definitely want to see a flop. Or he might come back with a 4-bet. No, looks like he's just going to call, see a flop.
Jake makes a call and we'll see a flop.
Well, he ran 3rd at the World Series in 2012 and kind of famously said, don't need to get a job now. Look at this flop. A 6-8-9 flop with 2 hearts. An action flop.
Yeah, well, that's hit both of them pretty hard. Darren with top pair in the gut shot draw. Jake with the over pair in the same gut shot draw. Might see some fireworks in this hand.
Rabinowitz leads or continues the aggression.
Well, there's no chance that Jake's going to fold here. He's put himself in a toughish position. The fact that he just called the 3-bet pre-flop. He's kind of has to guess at the moment, but the fact that he has the overpair and the gut shot, he's definitely going to see one more street. He's also got backdoor flush draw.
Calls.
And he makes the call. Rabinowitz has been a professional poker player for about 2 years now. And he sort of says that this is a pretty epic thing. Look at the turn card, a jack of diamonds.
Well, it's a very draw-heavy board now. But it actually strengthens both players' hands. They now have an open-ended draw instead of just the gut shot. Still both with second pair.
Looks like Rabinowitz wants to continue controlling the hand. He fires again. Back over to Bolsiger.
Darren bets out.
And I think the same line is perfect here for Jake. A check call. See if he can improve on the river. Again, he has to guess a little bit. Darren did 3-bet pre-flop and under the gun raise. Shows a lot of strength. So he could have the overpair here. But Jake does have a solid pair of tens and an open-ended draw.
He makes the call. The pot now over 1.3 million in chips. Let's see the river. It is another jack, a jack of spades.
And that's a good card for both players' hands. Becomes less likely that one of them has a jack in their hand, given that there's two on the board. They've both got to be pretty happy with the hand, but I expect a lot of time it'll just go check, check here. They've both got...
And that's exactly right, Grant. Both players checked, so they will table their hands, and Jake Bolsiger will win with pocket tens. Some support in the crowd and the gallery watching on. Bolsiger collects the chips. Final table, Aussie Millions 2014.
I started playing poker in middle school when Moneymaker won in 2003. And then after that, I didn't really play a whole lot. I played, tournaments with my friends for like a year. And then I just kind of forgot about it. And one of my good friends back home started playing. And he's like, hey, you can play this game for a living. And, that's way better than getting a job. So I just got a little bit of coaching from him, started playing and things went well, so I just stuck with it.
Also, the off chance of calls.
Yeah, that's quite a significant cash for Jake Bolsiger, that 2012 $3.8 million third prize at the World Series. Grant, were you watching that?
Yeah, I did watch that. It's a nice little career starter for anyone, I guess. Just jump in and win 3.8 straight off the bat.
There is Scott Siver in shot. Very successful poker player from the United States. Round to Vincent Rubianes, who folds.
The stylish Vincent. Got the afro and the scarf looking very good here.
Ami Bara raises the button with 5-7 offsuit. And there is Andrew Fedonas, a hometown hero, an Australian making the final table of the Aussie Millions. Great to see. We wish him well. Around to Sorrel Mitzi. This man is no stranger to success. Had an enormous last decade, and look what he's called with. A deuce and a 3 offsuit.
Oh, Sorrel playing the nut low.
And he's got a piece of it. The flop is King, Deuce, 4. And, well, he checks quickly.
This is the clash of the two big stacks. They both got monster stacks. Sorrel is covered by Army, but still has 100 big blinds. And taking the old adage, any two from the big blind, literally. He has 3-2 suited. He's actually flopped bottom pair and the flush draw. Just about as good as it gets for the nut low 3-2.
Well, the Canadian looks like he's coming along. Sorrel, no stranger to success, like I said earlier. Final table in 2010, wants to take it further. He came third. The turn is a king of hearts. And he checks again.
Yeah, the king changes very little. Sorrel still with a pair in the flush draw. It's a pretty solid hand.
And it goes check, check. Let's have a look at the river. The river is a 4 of spades.
Well, now that gives Army the best hand with 7 high.
Quite incredible.
There's not a chance that he knows that. And Sorrel looks like he's going to bet. It's the only way he can win the pot. Sorrel's playing the board. And I think he's just going to get away with it. And there's no way Army's going to call with the 7 high.
Well, Sorrel bets and Army folds, so a nice move there by Sorrel Mitzi. He did have the best hand at the flop and then turned it into a bluff on the river, and he got away with it too. And we'll be back with the 2014 Aussie Millions main event. Here in beautiful Melbourne, home to Crown and the Aussie Millions in 2014. Let's take a look at the leaderboard of the main event. Ami Bara from Canada sits atop at around 6.5 million in chips. We've got players from the United States and even an Aussie made the final table. Andrew Fedonas from Melbourne, Australia. He is just under 1 million in chips with around 19 big blinds. I sit next to Grant Levy, champion of the 2007 APPT Grand Final. Grant, you've been in situations like this before. The pressure gets to each player very differently, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more you put yourself in these positions, the easier it does become, Paul. But I think a lot of these guys, there are a few of them with a lot of experience on big final tables, but I tell you, every single one of them would be feeling it. Every single one of them would be looking at that $1.6 million, I'd say.
Well, Vincent Rubianes looks down at Jack 10 offsuit and he raises. He's from Stockton in the United States. Round to Sorrel Mitzi.
Sorrel's in a very good position. He's got 80 big blinds. He's going to come along for the ride.
Faults.
Round to Jake Bolsiger. He gets out of the way, as does Darren Rabinowitz. Scott Siver. 2 players to the flop.
Heads up.
And Sorrel Mitzi has called with pocket queens, the flop. 997.
It's a good call from Sorrel there. I know exactly what he's trying to do. Scott Siver was sitting in the big blind with 14 big blinds there. And by just calling there, it actually opens up the temptation for Scott to shove from the big blinds in a squeeze play. I'm sure Sorrel had that in mind.
Well, Rubianes has flopped a draw. It is a gutser. And he's led round to Sorrel, who makes the call.
Check a bet.
A little bit crafty here. The turn, a 6 of hearts. Will Rubianes slow down?
He still does have the overcards and the straight draw. And I think he's going to double barrel here. Try and get Sorrel off a 1-pair hand. If he does get called, he's got equity with the gut shot. May think he's Jack or 10 could be good.
He bets $250,000.
Sorrel has to think, do I want to get out of line with this hand? Do I want to start creating a big pot? It is a draw-heavy board. And the fact that he just called pre-flop, I think the right play there is just the call.
And he calls again. The river is 6 of spades, so Sorrel Mitzi has the best hand. Vincent Rubianes has been betting into him. He doesn't know he has queens. Sorrel really pulling off a very nice trap here. Will he fire again?
He doesn't look too keen at the moment. But he's been trying to tell a story. It'd be interesting to see if he wants to continue with that. But what has Sorrel been calling with? He has to think of that. 9-9-7-6 board. 6 on the river really changes nothing. And he also may think, well, Sorrel could call me with ace high here even. So it makes it hard to actually try and get a bet out here.
Well, he's checked now. There's $1 million in the pot. Sorrel now trying to extract. You can see the shot there. Vincent watching his hands.
And Sorrel looks like he's going for maximum value here.
And Vincent quickly folds. So Sorrel Mitzi taking a nice pot.
605.
And with that hand, Sorrel pulls ahead of Vincent Rubianes, showing some experience. Makes you wonder what goes through a poker player's mind.
I'm really excited, but I'm trying to just be really zen about it and breathe and not worry about it. Just try to go with the flow or whatever. Because if you're sitting there thinking about how much money it is, you really go insane. I just I don't know. If I'm thinking about the money, when I'm laying in bed at night, I 100% cannot go to sleep. I'm just sitting there, just my palms are still sweating, and my roommate told me that I'm just babbling all night in my sleep, and I was doing air push-ups or something like that. I don't even know. So yeah, you definitely have to try to put the money to the back of your mind and just try to focus on the poker.
Well, I can't imagine being at a final table like this and not thinking about the money, so he mustn't have slept for days.
It's a procedure.
Oh, back to the action, and it is on Sorrel Mitzi. He's had an incredible decade, hasn't he? He's pretty much made the final table of everything, WPT, EPT, WSOP, now the Aussie Millions for the second time. And Sorrel calls Army Bara's raise with ace-king of diamonds. Once again, Sorrel showing a tendency of trapping.
Yeah, he's playing pretty snug, Sorrel. And again, we had Scott in the blinds with a short stack. So maybe he's, thinking along the same lines as last hand when he had the queens. Just trying to get Scott to 3-bet shove over the top.
Check a bet.
Well, Army Bara versus Sorrel Mitzi. Let's have a look at the flop. It is king, king, deuce.
Yeah, well, that's pretty significant for Sorrel's hand, obviously. Army doesn't have much. I can't see him giving up, though. I think he's definitely going to fire at least one bullet.
Well, once again, Sorel's trap could pay off because he flat called pre-flop. The tendency was with Barra to continue, and that's what he's done. Over to Sorel. He calls with his trips.
And that's the right play. I mean, it's really a nothing flop.
Wow.
So obviously, you know, if he raises there, he's really getting so many hands to fold. So just calling, getting Army to fire again is perfect.
Looks like he's going to count out a raise this time. 375,000. So Sorel releasing the trap a little bit here.
Yeah, well, like I said, when there's two players here with such monster stacks, he wants to start building a pot. He's got such a strong hand. And given Sorel's aggression, these guys might have a little bit of history. Sorel's aggression, Army would expect him to make a move at some stage in the hand.
And Army gets out of the way, so that is a good fold. He caught a piece on the turn, but once again, Sorel's trap has paid off. And the action continues here at the 2014 Aussie Millions main event. Welcome back to the 2014 Aussie Millions main event. We are now down to a final table of 7 with a $1.6 million first prize. Let's take a look at the leaderboard. Army Barra from Canada leads the way, followed closely by Sorel Mitzi, also from Canada. And if you look down the bottom, you see an Australian, Andrew Fedonas. He is still in the action, and we hope he goes all the way. Scott Siver, one of the more experienced players at the table, is our short stack. I sit next to Grant Levy, 2007 APPT Grand Final winner. Grant, a little bit of action so far. Scott hasn't been very active, and he needs to make something happen.
Yeah, Scott Siver needs to make something happen here. Sitting in the short stack.
There's no doubt about it. Round to Vincent Rubianes. He folds. Army Barra.
Army with the monster stack, very active in the early stages of this final table.
He raises. There is Andrew Fedonas waiting for his hand. And Sorel gets out of the way. Round to Jake Bolsiger.
Jake's certainly very experienced on big final tables after his third place in the World Series of Poker main event 2012.
Well, Jake flats with pocket twos. And look at this, a flop's a set. 7 deuce 5 flop.
And Army's got a little bit of a piece of that too with middle pair. He's got to think his hand is pretty good. He's been called out of the blinds.
80,000.
Bets 80,000 into a pot of 260. It's a very small bet, Grant.
Yeah, it's a little feeler. He doesn't want to go overboard. He's got middle pair. He's got a bit of value, but he doesn't want to get raised off the hand. Doesn't want to get check raised here by Jake. It is kind of draw heavy board. It's pretty coordinated there. And he's got value, so he certainly wants to continue past the flop.
And Bolsiger calls, concealing his set. Great spot for him, isn't it? Oh, the turn is a 5 of diamonds. That could mean curtains for Barra.
Checks.
Yeah, well, that's a massive card.
Bolsiger checks.
Jake with his full house, checking it over for the second time.
Army Barra now with trips. Gotta think he's good.
Well, absolutely. He would have thought he was good on the flop after the check call. Now he really likes his hand.
Makes it around 200,000. Now Jake Bolsiger reaching for chips. Electing to call, so he's going to continue the trap. He has a full house. The river, a queen of diamonds. Army Barra with trip 5s. Bolsiger, full house.
Jake has played this really snug. Just check call, check call.
And he's checked again.
The diamonds got there. He might be hoping that Army's actually backdoored a diamond flush here. He can check raise, get a lot of value.
Well, he looks like he's reaching for chips. The pot around 870.
530,000.
And he sprung the trap. I expect a big check raise here.
550,000 is the bet. We expect a raise from Jake Bolsiger.
He's got 2.6 million behind. He really wants to somehow get all those chips in if he can. Expect a raise here, maybe 1.3 million.
Call.
Oh, well, Jake Bolsiger calls.
Wow.
Is that a misstep, Grant? Or has he convinced himself that he had pocket queens or something?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very cautious play from Jake. Maybe letting a little bit of nerves get to him, but, I mean, when you've got a full house there, it's hard to put a player on a better hand.
Now this hand is a perfect example of the difference between tournament poker and cash game poker. Jake flops a set in a spot where his opponent flops middle pair. On the turn, his opponent makes trips, but he just check calls, and even on the river, when a backdoor flush comes, he check calls. A lot of you must be scratching your head going, why didn't he go all in? Well, in his mind, he likely has so much respect for his opponent's ability to get away from good hands that he figures he's only gonna get called when he's beat. In this case, he might have got called because opponent did have that perfect hand trips, but you can't fault him for making a play that was about survival versus value, and that's what tournament poker is all about.
And back to the action, and a little bit of a let-off there for Army Barra. Jake Bolsiger electing to call a full house on the river. And see if that one plays out. Round to Scott Siver. Really needs to make something happen. And he announces, it is time.
Players all in.
Yeah, well, he was getting short. Certainly time to make a move.
Folds around to Andrew Fedonas, the only Australian at the table. There you see Scott Siver had King, Queen of Diamonds. Round to Andrew.
Yeah, it's a solid hand on Scott's short stack here.
Players all in.
And he announces all in as well, so the Australian moves in to isolate. We see one jack.
I'd say it's pocket jacks.
Andrew Fedonas all
And you are right, Grant, it is pocket jacks, so we are off to the races. And the only Australian at the table is at risk. He is the all-in player. As you can see, he can't contain himself. He has to go around for a walk. Of course, we're here in Crown Melbourne. Will the jacks hold? A flop of ace-deuce-4 is safe for Fedonas. We hope he survives. If you're an Australian, let's see the turn. Is a 10 of diamonds. What an incredible turn card.
He actually picks up, well, he would have picked up a royal flush draw. Fedonas is holding the jack of diamonds, so he can't make a royal flush, but still a plethora of outs for Scott.
Andrew needs to avoid.
He needs a brick. He's walked all the way almost offset.
Scott saying any flush will do.
We see the river. River card is
And the river's a 4 of spades, so Andrew Fedonas, a big cheer from the crowd, high fives all round. He has doubled up through Scott Siver and crippled him along the way. And we'll be back with more action at the 2014 Aussie Millions main event. Back with the Aussie Millions main event 2014 at Crown Melbourne. Let's take a look at the leaderboard. We have two Canadians on top, Army Barra and Sorel Mitzi. But you can see there, Andrew Fedonas has moved on up to 1.6 million in chips, and Scott Siver from the United States is now our short stack, but he still has 20 big blinds.
Yeah, the blinds at 30,000, 60,000. Scott with 1.2 million. While it's not panic stations yet, he certainly doesn't want to lose too many more pots.
Action on Vincent Rubianes. And he lets it go. Me Barra folds. And we see one ace. Ace-10 of clubs with Andrew Fedonas.
140.
Flying the flag here for Australia. Raises to 140,000.
Andrew putting his newfound chips to use.
Scott Siver picks up a pair of deuces.
It's in the big blind. It's a perfect spot just to call. Try and flop a set. Obviously, a set of deuces is going to be pretty disguised. And it's very easy to play. If you miss, it's easy just to let your hand go.
Well, Scott Siver electing to call, hoping to flop a set from Columbus, United States. And the flop is deuce, queen, 4. Another set of deuces, this time for Scott Siver.
And a bit of trouble here for Andrew as well. It's the nut flush draw. Backdoor straight draws.
Both players check. The turn, a 10 of hearts. That could mean a lot of trouble for the Melburnian.
Well, he's got a very strong hand now. He's got second pair. It was checked through on the flop, so he might not necessarily have Scott on a queen. Andrew's got the best 10 possible, plus the nut flush draw.
Little feeler bet from Scott Siver.
Scott wants to get a little bit of value. Once Andrew checks it back, he needs to start building a pot. So he's done the right thing by betting there.
Fedonas calls. And the river is a 7 of spades.
And the way this hand has played out, I expect Scott to bet again. And Andrew will find it quite hard to fold, to be honest.
400,000 to call.
The bet is 400,000.
Where's your left, Scott? 4 behind. Or a little more. 450
Scott's bet half his stack there on the river, so it's a legitimate bet. Andrew's got to be thinking that's very strong. But he also has second pair with the best kicker.
And Fedonas makes the call.
I think it's the right call. Unfortunately, he's run into a very big hand there from Scott. And that knocks Andrew back down to one of the short stacks.
Scott Siver with a much-needed pot there. Been playing for approximately 8 years now as a professional. He has around 9 million in career earnings. There is the leaderboard, and the two Canadians still lead. But with that hand, Andrew Fedonas now slips to the short stack, around about 11 big blinds. Grant, you've come back from the short stack many times. You've talked about it with me. What goes through your head when you're leading as opposed to when you're a short stack?
I mean, when you're leading and you're so deep stacked like Army Bar is, you just want to play a lot of hands, get involved, pick up all the small pots. As a short stack, you can't do that, so you need to be patient. You need to find the right spot, turn your opponent's aggression against them. A lot of the time, it's just wait for a spot, get it in, hope you've got the best hand, and hope you hold up.
Sorel Mitzi from Canada, second in chips at the moment, opens the pot.
Fold. The flavor is close after like 4 levels, so it would have been 5.
We see Scott Siver with King, Queen of Diamonds. We know Sorel has an ace.
Scott Siver, the second time in the space of a few hands with King, Queen of Diamonds.
Scott electing to flat call on the button.
He's got position. He's got big stacks in the blinds. So it's fraught with a little bit of danger. These guys can 3-bet from here. Makes it hard for Scott. Also makes it hard for Sorel, sandwiched in the middle. We don't know his second card.
Well, Army Bara picked up ace, 6 of diamonds in the big blind and flat calls. So we now know that Sorel has an ace, but we don't know what the other card is. So let's see how this pans out. Well, an interesting flop. Jack 7-7, 2 diamonds.
Yeah, well, I mean, Army and Scott both very happy with their big flush draws here.
Could be a lot of trouble if a diamond hits the turn. Sorel, the pre-flop aggressor.
Yeah, it's only natural for him to continue. He can't be too worried about Army Bara, given that he's just flat called the initial raise and not squeezed there.
It sounded like a bet of around 220,000, and Scott Siver flats the button around to Army Bara now with the nut flush draw. It is a paired board though.
And just further to what I said before, obviously, Sorel, he's seen that Army hasn't shown a lot of strength just calling pre-flop, but his hand range is pretty wide there, so he can easily have a 7. It's hard for him to continue.
Sorel makes the call. This pot is getting bigger and bigger. Action is now on Scott Siver, who has a King, Queen of Diamonds in his hand.
Now he's in a jam. He's called on the flop. There's been a raise and a call. And he wants to continue with his King High flush.
And he calls. So the pot now nearly 2 million. This turn could be huge. The turn card is a black jack. A jack of clubs.
Yeah, it's pretty anticlimactic now. The flush draws don't really like their hand now.
Check. Check a bet.
Army's got to expect one of these guys have a jack or a 7. It might be a case of whoever fires here first is going to get it through.
Scott Siver reaching for chips.
Bet 435,000.
435,000 is the amount. Over to Army Bara now.
And that's a really strong bet. Scott's only got 780,000 behind. It's really hard to just call this bet, knowing that if you do call, the natural thing for Scott to do is to shove the river. So without a 7 or a jack here, it's going to be really hard for Sorel to continue.
And he announces all in. So we don't know what Sorel has, but one suspect he has now ace-jack.
And Scott gives up a lot of his chips there.
Well, he folds, obviously.
And ace-jack for Sorel.
Well, Sorel Mitzi is no stranger to the Aussie Millions. Here is From the Vault. Here's some footage of Sorel in 2010. He was an overwhelming chip leader coming into the final table, and many expected him to take it out, but unfortunately for him, it was not his year. He's made the final tables of the WPT, the EPT, the WSOP, and now the Aussie Millions for the second time. Will 2014 be the year for Sorel Mitzi? And we'll be back after the break at the Aussie Millions.
LK Boutique boasts Australia's most extensive collection of Rolex watches, high-end jewellery and luxury gifts and accessories. Put simply, this place is pretty fancy. All the Aussie Millions jewellery is supplied through LK Boutique, including the 19 championship rings and the most coveted piece in Australian poker, the diamond-encrusted main event bracelet. This is what it's all about. The Aussie Millions Poker Championship bracelet. Forget the money. Every poker player is after this diamond-encrusted little baby. Designed by LK Boutique and manufactured in Italy, the creation of the bracelet involves a staggering 80 hours of design and 120 hours of production. The bracelet is made of 18 karat white gold, contains 130 black diamonds, 106 white diamonds, and 16 rubies. The bracelet is truly one of a kind, and while it's valued at over $38,000, it's simply something money can't buy. But let's head back to the poker room and see who's a step closer to winning it.
Thank you, Sherry. Yes, you're right. That bracelet is something that every poker player dreams of. And there is our leaderboard. 7 players still remain out of the 668 that started this main event. Sorel Mitzi from Canada leads the way. Back to the action. We are yet to lose anyone from our final table. There is Scott Siver, one of the more experienced players at the table. Round to Vincent Rubianes. He folds. Ami Bara. He was the chip leader until Sorel took it from him.
Still very healthily stacked, though.
Raises to 120,000 with ace-jack offsuit. Action on Sorel now. He has the button. Position so important, Grant, especially amongst the more experienced players.
Absolutely. Position is everything in poker. The fact that you get to act last on every street.
As Sorel is showing us by 3-betting on the button, and he has a very creative 8-4 of hearts.
It's very easy to do that on the button, though. You've got position, you get a lot more information, get to see what Army does every street, or what your opponent does every street.
And a call from Ami Bara. So let's see. Sorel has had a tendency of trapping with big hands. This is certainly not a big hand, but the flop is a 7-3-4, so he's caught the flop.
Yeah, it's a good flop for Sorel. It's a 3-bet pot, though. He's only got middle pair, 8 kicker. He's not going to go overboard with it. And Army's just got the ace high.
Well, he checks to Sorel. And he checks. So aggressive pre-flop, perhaps a little passive post. The turn is a jack. The jack of clubs.
So Army retakes the lead. And the check back on the flop. It's a green light for Army to have a bet here, take a stab. And Sorel knows that as well. So it's going to be hard for him to fold. He does have a pair here.
He bets 240,000. Over to Sorel now. And look at this. He makes the call. And the river is another jack, the jack of diamonds. So, well, Ami Bara was out of position, but now has the best hand. Can he extract anything from Sorel?
Yeah, well, the fact that Sorel called on the turn there, the jack on the river now makes it less likely that Ami actually has a jack. So it doesn't really change the strength of Sorel's hand too much.
He makes a bet of 420,000 into Sorel.
And I think the fact that Sorel called on the turn, he might call again here. He checked back the flop, which opened the door for Ami. And Ami's just gone the double barrel. And Sorel thinks something might be up, and I can see him making a call here.
So much pressure at these final tables, especially the Aussie Millions. We saw the beautiful bracelet they're playing for. He makes the call. You're right, Grant. Well, he put himself in that position by being a bit creative with a very funky hand. Ami Bara, we can't see his expression because he's got the hood over his head, but he must be very happy with that hand.
Yeah, I'm surprised Sorel checked back the flop, actually.
Let's take a look at the leaderboard. Sorel Mitzi still sits atop with 5.4 million. Ami Bara not too far behind with 3.8. And Andrew Fedonas, our hometown hero, is flying the flag at 770,000. He is our short stack. He really needs to try and make something happen soon. He's been quite patient, a little bit unlucky earlier, but, you know, to make an Aussie Millions final table is quite an accomplishment in itself, it must be said.
Absolutely. Like you said, 668 players. He's the last Australian remaining. He's on the short stack, needs to make something happen.
It's 80 to call.
Folds around to Darren Rabinowitz.
Raise 160.
Makes it 160,000 to go. And we see an ace. Actions on Scott Siver. He has the button.
All in.
And he announces all in, so a 3-bet shove from Scott. He has pocket eights.
And Scott with about 16 big blinds, shoving with the pocket eights, pretty standard. And given the way that's played out, I'm pretty sure Darren's going to make the call here.
He has ace-10 off suit. And he does make the calls. You're right, Grant, so we're off to the races. And Scott Siver is the all-in player, so if we see an ace or a 10, he will be eliminated in 7th place. And there is the flop, and there is the ace. Ace, Jack, King. Bit of heartbreak there for Scott Siver.
Darren with a hammerlock on the hand. Scott needs a black 8. It's the only thing that's going to keep him alive.
Can he survive? 7 players at the final table. Will it be 6? The turn is a 3 of hearts.
Yeah, the turn always brings a sweat, Paul. Scott picks up the flush draw. Still has an 8 that he can improve with as well.
Scott Siver, 1 card away. Will a heart or an 8 save him on the river?
And we see a river card. River card is
And there it is, a blackjack will do it. And Scott Siver is eliminated in 7th place. Big applause from the audience. Hell of a thing making the Aussie Millions main event final table. He's done very well, very experienced poker player. Hugs and handshakes all round. He will take home 170,000 Australian dollars. Well, knowing Scott Siver, he will be very disappointed. He came so close. He turned a lot of outs, but he didn't quite get there. Scott Siver is eliminated in 7th place. And we'll be back after the break at the Aussie Millions main event. Welcome back to Crown Melbourne for the Aussie Millions 2014 main event. 6 players remain now, with Sorel Mitzi sitting atop of our leaderboard, and our Australian at the final table, Andrew Fedonas, is our short stack, but he is going to try and make it there. It is the title that every poker player dreams of. There is Ami Bara as the gallery gets quite loud.
Raise to 160.
Raises to 160,000. Action around to Sorel Mitzi.
These two guys have sparred a few times already. Both have big stacks, putting them to use. Sorel, the current chip leader. And looks like he's going to come along with a call from the button. Again with position.
He makes the call, folds around. 2 players to the flop. Both the big stacks.
And both with pocket pairs.
The flop, 9-10 jack.
Well, that's a rubbish flop for pocket fours. But it's a very coordinated flop. It's a flop that I don't usually like to bet into a pre-flop caller. It's likely to hit the caller's range more than it is to hit the opener's range.
Well, it didn't stop him. He fired straight at Sorrel.
Sorrel with the open-ended draw. The bottom end of the open-ended draw, mind you, but the open-ended draw all the same. I think he's definitely going to come along, see another card.
He makes the call. We will see a turn. 5 of diamonds. Will Army Bara continue?
I don't see him continuing again. Sorrel's call shows him that he has at least a draw. And like I said, with Sorrel's pre-flop call, that flop does hit his range. Sorrel's got a lot of value here. I think he might, yeah, he just check back.
And the river is a king.
And I think we might see the same action repeated on the river here. There's 4 to a straight there. Any queen makes a straight. I don't think Army can credibly represent any hand that's going to fold Sorrel out.
And both players check, so Sorrel Mitzi will take another pot off Army Bara and continues to grow his stack.
Yes, Sorrel using his experience to steamroll the table at the minute.
Well, back in 2010, he was the chip leader. He is again now. There is the leaderboard, and there he is on top with just over 6.4 million in chips. Jake Bolsiger now in second place with 3.8. And if you look down the bottom, you've got Army Bara, who's one of the short stacks now, but Andrew Fedonas from Melbourne hanging in there, trying to make something happen, flying the flag for Australia.
Yeah, it's getting pretty critical for Andrew now. He's very short, needs to find a spot to double up. And interestingly, Army down to the second shortest chip stack after being in cruise control for the first portion of this final table with a big stack. Still has plenty of play left, though, with over 2 million chips.
Well, Rabinowitz raises with pocket threes, makes it 160 to go. Pots around 340,000. Folds around to Andrew Fedonas on the button.
He's having to think about it. This could be the hand.
He just calls.
That's an interesting flat call from the small blind. Andrew is very short with about 7 big blinds. Very unconventional play. Looks like he might be going for the old stop and go. Just calling pre-flop, hoping to hit some type of pair or draw and get it in. And you can see he's got Queen Jack of clubs. So he's hoping to hit some type of pair or draw.
Sorrel in the big blind, pondering.
He's getting good value here too. So it's quite easy for him to just come along and see a flop. He's only got to call 80,000 into 460. It's tremendous value.
Well, he doesn't do that. He raises. He's going to show the power of the big stack. Darren Rabinowitz folds. And look at that. He's not bluffing. He's got pocket kings.
It's such a great spot for Sorrel to actually raise here. And if either of these guys had any semi-decent hand, they'd go with it.
Wow, and look at this. Andrew Fedonas. Well, he moved all in. He obviously didn't make Sorrel for his pocket kings there. You're right, Grant. It was a great spot. He stands up. Andrew, the only Australian at this final table, and he's a big underdog.
Yeah, he's in horrible shape here. He's got blockers to his straight cards. He'd be much better with a hand like 6-7 suited here against kings.
Well, it's great to see some camaraderie between these players. They kind of all wish that each other luck, but at the same time, they don't. Sorrel trying to eliminate the only Australian in the field. And the flop is King 5-3, so Sorrel, he flops top set. That's got to be pretty crushing.
A couple of backdoor draws, but he really needs to improve on his hand immediately on the turn here with a club or a 10 or an ace.
I need a little sweat.
Oh, the turn. And it is an ace, so there is a sweat.
Don't try that.
So he has the 4 10s as clean outs for the win, and he can double up, otherwise he'll go home in 6th place, which is a tremendous run.
Can Andrew Fedonas pull a 10 out of the deck on the river to survive. No, he can't. The river does not help him. He is eliminated. Unfortunately, we lose the only Australian at the Aussie Millions final table. He's eliminated in 6th place, but he takes home $250,000 and a nice round of applause from the audience. Great effort from Andrew. What an action-packed final table it's been thus far. 668 became 7, and now after 2 eliminations, we have only 5 players remaining before we crown a champion. $1.6 million first prize is what they're playing for, and all the glory of being the 2014 Aussie Millions champion.